Good afternoon. My name is Conor Hanly. I'm a lecturer at the School of Law at NUI Galway. I specialise in teaching criminal law, and I'm not going to speak about criminal law specifically, but I am actually manning the booth for the BCL in criminology and criminal justice. So if you have any questions about criminal law, criminology, criminal justice, the structure of that particular program, please join me after this talk. I'll be back there about 1:30 or so. Instead, today, right now, what I want to talk to you about is studying law more generally at NUI Galway. And I'm going to try to answer two questions. The first question is why you might consider studying law. I know many of you haven't fully made up your minds yet. So that's going to be, I guess, the fundamental question. And then secondly, why you might consider studying law with us. And I want to emphasize the way that we teach law at NUI Galway, but I'll get onto that later. Just before we start, as you see on the slide on the screen, it's important to know a little something about the standing of the institution that you're planning to go to. And rightly or wrongly, fair or unfair, not all institutions are necessarily viewed the same way or held in the same level of regard. And that's an important matter for you, because if you go to college, you're making a very substantial investment, both in terms of your time, in terms of your effort, in terms of money. Yours, your parents, and the taxpayers. So you want to get as much back from that as you can to make that investment as worthwhile as you can. And part of that return on your investment is the standing of the institution that awards your qualifications. Now, obviously, I'm employed at NUI Galway. I'm here to tell you how brilliant we are, and we are, as I hope you'll see later on. But you can't really trust me, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't trust me. What you should do is look for independent verification. And there's a couple of points on this slide here that you might like to consider. In the first place, in 2019, just before everything got slammed by the coronavirus, we were deemed the best law school in Ireland. We didn't give ourselves that award. This was an independent entity that looked at what we do and judged us to be better than anybody else in the country. And the other award there from the Times Higher Education rankings for 2021 put us at number 85 in the world. Now keep in mind that there are literally thousands of educational institutions in the world. So being ranked 85th is really a very considerable achievement. Both of these independent awards, and I can't stress that enough, they are entirely independent of us. Both of those awards should give you a measure of reassurance about the standing of a degree that you would get from NUI Galway. It will be recognized wherever you go. I know that personally. I had the opportunity to study at Yale University in the United States on the basis of my undergraduate degrees awarded by what was then UCG, but is now NUI Galway. Your degree will take you anywhere you want to go. A degree from NUI Galway will be respected wherever you go. So in that respect, attending NUI Galway is a very good investment for your time and your effort, and I do think that's worth keeping in mind. Okay, let's move on to the first question I outlined, why you might consider studying law. And you know, there's loads of reasons. There's no right reason, there's not really any wrong reason. People choose to study in particular disciplines for a variety of reasons. But I'm going to look at three. The first is intellectual stimulation. The second is the utility of a law degree just in your personal life. And thirdly, the range of career possibilities, which are much broader, I think, than many people realize. So we'll start with the first reason there. And The study of law involves the study of how we regulate ourselves, both individually and how we regulate our relationships with others and with the state, and how we regulate the power of the state. And these are really big, really difficult questions. They're also fascinating questions. And they involve consideration and debate in a lot of different areas, some very, very difficult areas. And I've mentioned some of them there on the slide. The issue of abortion, of course, highly divisive. We've had a referendum on the matter. Doesn't necessarily mean that the matter is now dealt with, because, of course, we could have another referendum. And that debate just, it just keeps on giving. The issue of gay marriage, that's also been dealt with by referendum. Again, it could perhaps be opened later on. So as law students, you can't just assume that these issues are gone. You need to think about these issues and think about the values that you think the state should be protecting through its laws and through its constitution. We have other issues that are likely to arise. Assisted suicide is being debated in the Oireachtas at the moment. With the issue of cloning, the possibility of cloning human beings. The technology it's either very close or it's already there, and maybe we just don't know about it yet. What happens if we clone a human being? What status will that clone have? Will they have a status independent of the person that they were cloned from? In which case we have two people with the identical genetic makeup. How's that going to work? Is that, if let's say that I am cloned, is my clone me? Am I him? Somebody is going to have to make those decisions. Does my clone have the same responsibilities that I have? Is my clone entitled to my salary? Is my clone married to my wife? I very much hope not, but these are the kind of issues that cloning is going to bring up. The status of the clone. Is the clone a human being? Can the clone be harvested for human parts? I don't know. Somebody is going to have to make that decision, and that somebody is going to be a lawyer. The use of stem cell for medical purposes. That gives rise to a whole host of very difficult, very fundamental questions. As law students, you will be diving into some of these issues literally from your first year. You'll be studying constitutional law in first year. And constitutional law is the study of our constitution, which sets the parameters of our country. So these are the kind of issues that you're going to have to address in the context of constitutional law. First year subject. So you're getting stuck into the most fascinating parts of the law from day one. Now, obviously, not all legal areas are equally interesting, and not all individual subjects are fascinating from day one. There are some boring parts, of course there are, as there are in every discipline. But taken as a whole, the study of how we try to regulate ourselves is absolutely fascinating, and it will give rise to all kinds of discussions and debates, both with your lecturers and with your fellow students. And don't rule out how much you can learn from talking to your fellow students who may have very different ideas to your own. So that's the first reason. The study of law is absolutely fascinating from an intellectual level. The second reason you might want to consider studying law is that it's a very useful discipline for you personally. Whether you become a lawyer or not, whether you practice as a solicitor or a barrister, just in your personal life. So if I were to ask you, how many of you have ever made a legally binding contract? Many of you would probably say, no, I've never made a contract. The truth is, you have been making contracts almost every day of your lives. Certainly, since you were able to move around independently and have a bit of pocket money, you've been buying things. Every time you buy a bag of potatoes, salt and vinegar, obviously, that's your only man. You buy a bag of salt and vinegar potatoes, that is a legally binding contract. It puts into practice principles of contract law that have been developed by the courts for centuries. You don't know it, but you are. You are already a legal person engaging with the law. And that's only going to increase. On the slide there, I've given a few other examples. Driving a car. Many of you, probably most of you, are not yet driving, but you will be soon. Driving is a very heavily legally regulated activity. We don't all drive on the left by accident. It's because there's a law that says we drive on the left. There are laws regulating how fast we drive, how we execute different maneuvers like overtaking and so on. At some point, you're all going to be renting accommodation, or you'll be buying accommodation at some point. The amount of law that's engaged in signing a lease and enforcing a lease, in buying a property, it's enormous. Voting. Again, many of you haven't yet had the opportunity to vote, but you will. Voting is regulated both at constitutional and at statutory level. So you're engaging with the law every day of your lives, usually without even realizing it. So a knowledge of the law, a knowledge of how the legal system works, is going to be tremendously useful for you just from your own perspective, even if you don't work within the law. As a legal professional, you will be working within the law. There is no area of employment that is not heavily regulated by the law. So understanding how this law system works, how this law thing works, is going to be very useful to you. So that's the second reason. The third reason is the range of careers. And I meet a lot of secondary school students like yourselves. I meet a lot of parents, and there tends to be an assumption that a law degree leads in one direction only. That if you get a law degree, you're sort of heading towards solicitor or barrister. And indeed, many law graduates do. We have a huge number of practicing solicitors and barristers among our alumni. But there are so many other options as well. I just mentioned that there is no aspect of modern society that is not legally regulated, and a knowledge of law will be very useful in whatever field you go into, which means your law degree travels well. And by travel, I mean in two senses. First, it travels well in terms of the kind of sector that you can get involved in. My first job was in an insurance company. When I left college with my law degree, I got a job in an insurance company. Some of my classmates went into banking. Some of them went into the civil service. Some went into the European Commission. Some went on to further study. Some became academics, as I am now. So there's a huge range of possibilities. The list on the screen here just gives you a flavor of how broad your options are when you have a law degree from NUI Galway. I said that I was using the word travel in two respects. One is as regards the field you go into. The other is the more usual meaning of travel, as in if you go abroad. Ireland is a common law country, and as such, it's part of a family of nations that uses the common law system. Essentially, it's England and former English colonies, the former British Empire. So you're looking at most of the United States, you're looking at Canada, most of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. These are all common law countries. Your law degree will equip you to fit in those countries as well. Now, there will be conversion processes, you will have to sit further exams and so on. But in terms of understanding the basic legal system, it's pretty much the same as ours. And that's a huge advantage. And it opens up a whole range of extra possibilities that you should consider. You're not tied to Ireland. And many of our graduates have graduated and gone on to become legal professionals in Northern Ireland, in England, in the United States, especially New York and California, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand. So keep in mind the sheer range of opportunities that a law degree from NUI Galway can give you. Don't confine yourself to solicitor or barrister. There's nothing wrong with those options. They're tremendous options, and probably most of our graduates do go down the professional route. But there are many others, and I'm just saying that you should keep that in mind as you proceed. So that's the third reason that you might consider studying law. But before I go into the second question that I want to answer, I'm sometimes asked, what are the attributes of a law student? And I've had many parents say to me over the years, only partly in jest, that, oh my God, my son or my daughter, they won't stop arguing with me. God, they make great lawyers. Well, it's a little more than that. There's a difference between being a good lawyer and being argumentative. Okay? The attributes that we think mark out somebody who might fit well into the law and the study of law, firstly, is somebody who enjoys reading. I can't stress this enough. There is so much reading to be done in the study of law, and indeed in the practice of law. You have to read long case judgments, and many of them you have to read legislation. You need to be able to interpret that legislation. If you don't enjoy reading, if reading is a real chore for you, then maybe the study of law isn't for you. Secondly, somebody who's good at communication and finds communication relatively easy. And I'm not just talking about speaking. It also includes writing, being able to get your point across to somebody else. A student who is good with communication is a long way towards the skills required to be a lawyer. And it will help, particularly for somebody who wants to be a barrister, if you have experience in public speaking, or at the very least that you're not absolutely terrified of public speaking. Now, I'll talk in a few moments about how we teach law at NUI Galway, and speaking is a part of what we teach. It's one of the essential skills that we try to develop in all of our graduates. But obviously having a background in public speaking is going to be useful. And then I'm also often asked, well, what kind of subject should I be taking for the Leaving Cert in order to prepare for my great glittering legal career? And the good news is that every academic discipline that you study in secondary school and take for your Leaving Cert is going to bring skills to the table that you'll be able to use as a lawyer. So you shouldn't worry too much about subjects. Again, experience suggests somebody who's good at English, who's good at language, using the language of English. That's a really useful skill because language is essentially what law is. The study of subjects like history, text-based subjects like history, are also useful because if you take a law degree, you're going to be moving into a very text-based subject. So you'll be training yourself, if you like, by taking history, by taking geography, and subjects like that. You're training yourself in the kind of skills needed to work with legal texts. But on the other hand, every other subject brings its benefits. Our current Chief Justice, Frank Clark, is a mathematician by training. Mathematics, you might think, well, how does mathematics translate into law? Mathematics is the foundation of logical thought. Being able to think logically, to produce a logical argument, is an essential skill for lawyer. So as I say, don't worry too much about the subjects that you take. There are certain fundamental subject requirements that you will need. So you'll need probably English or Irish. Unless you have an exemption from Irish, you'll need another European language, again, unless you have an exemption. For law and business and law and taxation, you'll need maths and so on. But outside of that, those basic general requirements, don't worry too much about the subjects that you take at school. As I say, they all bring certain skills to the table. Okay, let's move on then to the second question. Why study law at NUI Galway? And let's start thinking about this by just thinking about what it is that a lawyer does. Imagine that you're a solicitor and a client comes through the door. They don't sit down and say, hey, tell me all you know about the law of murder. I'm just interested. That will almost never happen. What they'll do is say something like, I've been arrested, I've been charged with such and such a crime, I need help. Your job is firstly to find out what happened. What is the actual problem? And once you've identified the problem, you need to be able to find the relevant law, research it thoroughly. You need to be able to analyze that law and analyze the problem, the factual situation. You need to be able to put together all of this information, to synthesize it, and come to some conclusions, which you then have to communicate, both orally to your client and to a court, but also in writing. These are the skills of a lawyer. And in years past, it was sort of assumed that these skills would just magically appear. And I guess for some, they did. But these skills are like any other kind of skills. They can be taught, and they can be nurtured, they can be practiced, they can be developed. And at NUI Galway, we realized that several years ago. So we redid all of our programs, all of them, to put the development of legal skills right at the heart of what we do. Now, of course, we teach the law, and we impart a huge amount of legal knowledge and case law and legislation, but we also try to give you the skills that you will need to use all of that knowledge and information as a lawyer to help solve your client's problems. And I think it's fair to say that we're unique in this. We are the only law school that has looked at all of our programs and resettled them, redrawn them to put these skills at the heart of what we do. And let's look at the structure of our law programs. All of our law programs follow the same basic structure. They're 4-year programs. And the skills start literally on day one. Your first day as a first-year student in any of our law programs, you will start into the development of these skills. In fact, for the first month, you won't study any law. You won't be taking any substantive legal classes. You'll be taking skills classes. That's how important that's the importance that we attach to the development of skills. And there's a lot of foundational skills here: how to research, how to write, how to interpret cases, how to interpret legislation, how to use the library, the foundations of legal writing, how to develop a legal argument. And for the rest of first year, after that first month, we try to teach the substantive legal subjects like constitutional law, like contract law. We try to teach them in a way that will allow you to foster those skills. And in year 2, we put them into practice, because all law students at NUI Galway are required to take a module called mooting. Mooting is essentially it's a make-believe court. We give you a legal problem, you work in a small team, 2 or 3 students, and you have to look at the problem that we present you, you have to research it, you have to write a legal argument, and then you have to present in a mock court. Present your arguments orally. Now, I'm teaching the moot court, or co-teaching the moot court this year. I've taught it several years, and students tell me it's the single most terrifying thing they've ever done. Because of this emphasis on speaking and oral argument, where you're in a dialogue with a real judge. The finalists will be judged by real sitting judges. These students have also told me it's the single most amazing experience they've had, because they learn more about being a lawyer in the 10 minutes that they're on their feet being grilled by the judge than they have for the last 2 years. Year 3, we want you to go abroad or to get involved in a work placement. I'll speak about them in a little more detail in a moment. And then finally, in 4 of our programs, you can specialize in your degree. There's no specialism available in the criminology program, but all the others you can. And we cap off your skills by requiring you to engage in a guided research essay. At the end of this, you should have not only a really good knowledge of the law, but also a set of skills that will help you use that knowledge and will stand you in good stead in whatever direction you go in. Just a few more words. I'm conscious that we're running out of time, but on year 3, all of our students are required either to study abroad in a number of in one of a number of partner institutions around Europe and in the United States, in Australia, in China. The level of skills and experience that brings is amazing. I know that from my own perspective. I got to spend 4 years studying in the United States. It's a tremendous opportunity. I can't recommend it highly enough. Or alternatively, you can go on a work placement where you learn by doing. We try to ensure that most of our placements are paid. We can't guarantee that because some of our placements are with NGO organizations who simply don't have the money. But the experience that students gain is absolutely priceless. And it reflects our view that there's more to studying law than just sitting in a classroom or sitting in a library. You've got to go out there and experience it out there. Just a couple of other issues, very, very briefly. If you take a look at our courses, we have a range of different programs to reflect not only the kind of expertise that we have in the school, but also I think it reflects there's something for everybody. If you're interested in law, you're going to find something here that's of interest to you. Our flagship program, if you like, is the BCL program. And there are a number of variations, BCL with human rights, BCL with criminology and criminal justice. But we also have a law and business and a more specialized law and taxation program. These are all full law degrees. I need to stress that. These are full law degrees. They carry all the subjects required by both legal professions. So you're getting a full law degree, but with a measure of specialization, unless you take the BCL, which is designed to be more general. Now, you can actually specialize within the general BCL as well. It's just that the other subjects are more specialized inherently. But we also contribute to other programs, and I'll mention specifically the BA Joint Honours in Law. That's actually the program that I took. My first degree at NUI Galway was a BA in History and Law. The great benefit of these BA programs and BCom programs is that you get a much wider education. You're not just studying law. So I got to study law and history. Some of my classmates were studying law and sociology and politics. Some were studying law and philosophy. An amazing opportunity to get a breadth of knowledge. And these are disciplines, of course, that impact upon the law. So have a look at those courses. You will find something of interest to you there. I'll also mention very briefly, if we can have the next slide there, Michael, please. That there is this tremendous scholarship, the Terence O'Malley DLA Piper Scholarship. It provides a level of funding for scholars throughout their 4-year study, €2,500 each year, up to a maximum value of €10,000. Note the third point there, scholars will preferably have a home address in Mayo, but consideration is given to applicants with a home address in the west of Ireland, which is Connacht plus Donegal and Clare. I'm out of time. Thank you very, very much for your attention. If you have any questions, come visit us in the virtual exhibition hall. I'm going to be heading back to the criminology stand. If you have any questions about criminal justice and criminal stuff, please come along and give me a shout. But outside that, as I say, thank you so much for your interest in studying law at NUI Galway, and I hope we'll get to see you at some point in the future. Thank you. Take care.